The biggest thing I had to know is could this one little app realistically increase my earnings 33% from $150 a day to $200 a day in the same amount of hours and without using more mileage or doing something drastic. Like, I really wanted to see, is this going to change how I dash, change the orders I accept? What is this really going to do with the information that it's giving me now that I have complete information? With tip transparency, do I take different orders? What up, 30 Dashers? Have you been on the fence about using Para? Have you been concerned about the risk of deactivation? Have you been looking for a way to once and for all figure out if the risk is worth it or not? Well, in today's video, I'm going to review the decision-making process I went through when I was deciding whether if I should use Para or not, including the math that I did and how I ended up choosing to use Para and conscientiously risk deactivation. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video to learn about how I combine Para with Driver's Utility Helper and use them both to make more money. By the way, subscribe to this channel if you like tips, ride-along, and news that help you make more money with DoorDash, Grubhub, and Uber Eats. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. When I was deciding if I should use Para or not, I weighed my perceived chances of activation with the information that I currently have, and I put that against the amount of money I expected to make, or rather the increase in money that I expected to make if I chose to use Para. Because I tell you this, if I'm going to use Para, I'm not going to add that risk of deactivation without adding more money to my pockets. The other thing that I wanted to know is if I chose to use Para, what would the break-even point be? What I'm saying is if I got deactivated at some point between now and the end of the year, like how much would I have to make to have made it had been worth it to use Para up until the time that I got deactivated? That's what I'm calling the break-even point. In my mind, if I can exceed the break-even point, then it would be mathematically worth it for me to use Para. So if I didn't use Para for the rest of the year and I'm hit my daily goal of $150 per day on 180 days, I would make $27,000. So $27,000 would be my baseline if I don't use Para for the rest of the year. Now, I know that some of these numbers aren't going to be exact. There's going to be what about this and what about that, but basically these numbers will help me establish a baseline, and then we can establish where using Para or the break-even point would be in relation to this same apples to apples example. So in trying to figure out what the risk of deactivation for using Para was, I couldn't find any verifiable sources from people that had been deactivated for using Para. So from what I had seen on the internet, as well as Para's clear disclaimer that yes, using Para is against the DoorDash terms of service, I saw my chances of getting deactivated from Para as 50-50, and then I took that claim with somebody that was deactivated from Para and said, hey, it's 50-50 chance that is true as well. So I took a half of that half and did a crude mathematic and gave myself a 25% chance of getting deactivated. A half of a half is a quarter. Boom. Now, as far as the benefit of using Para, if I were to use Para, I would increase my goal from $150 a day to $200 a day. Using that goal of $200 a day, I would actually hit that same $27,000 in 135 days, which is actually 45 days earlier, essentially a month and a half sooner. Now, if I were to use Para for the rest of the year, I would have $200 times 180 days, which would actually be $36,000, almost 10 grand more at the end of the year. The biggest thing I ask myself is, do I really believe that my risk of deactivation based on the information that I've seen is equal to or greater than 25%? That being said, I take that calculated risk to use Para. For me to actually find out though if using Para was worth it, I wanted to give it a trial period before I even spoke about it to other people and said, hey, you should use this or shouldn't use this. So I've been using it for the last couple of weeks. The biggest thing I had to know is could this one little app realistically increase my earnings 33% from $150 a day to $200 a day in the same amount of hours and without using more mileage or doing something drastic. Like, I really wanted to see, is this going to change how I dash, change the orders I accept? What is this really going to do with the information that it's giving me now that I have complete information? With tip transparency, do I take different orders, or I don't know, do I just only cherry pick? What do I do? So the first thing I noticed when I started using Para is that although it changed nothing about the short orders I accepted, it did change how I perceived those medium distance orders. So for example, those 4 to 8 mile orders, because of my market, I typically take orders that are 4 miles or less. Now I want to be upfront, how I perceive these orders has nothing at all to do with DoorDash's new pay model. This is because of information that I'm getting from Para. And here's an example. Would you take this order? You see that miles, you see the dollar per mile, you can do that in your head, right? Now, would you take it with it was this amount instead? See how that changes it to over $2 per mile? Now, let's look at some more examples. Would you take this order? Would you consider it now? And finally, would you take this order? And would you consider it now? So when I look at those larger orders, the amount of money, I don't compare it to the distance anymore. I start to compare it to the amount of time that I'm going to spend completing that order. And I also include whether where I deliver to is going to end me in a hotspot, because I'm also looking at how much time is it going to not only take me to complete that order, but how much time is it going to take me to get my next order as well. If I can get an order of $15 or more and I can get it done in 25 to 30 minutes or less, I'm consistently going to be pacing myself for earning over $25 per hour, which is my basic level goal or the minimum amount that I'd like to make. So long story short, I used to keep my routes to 4 miles or less, and now, although I don't do it consistently, I'm more willing to go up to 8 or 9 miles for an order based on it's a good amount, the time it'll take me to complete that order, and the ending location of that order, especially because I'm multi-apping. Now, look at this earnings report. This is from just the other day. This is actually from Monday, and as you can see, my dollars per hour, my dollars per mile, all of those things are on point. Now, once again, I will say that this may not be for every area. If you can't take a long route and end up near a hotspot, this might not make a difference for you. If you really can't do that in your area, this doesn't really change the short routes that I take, then I wouldn't use PAR unless you think that you can get something like, say, $20 for 8 miles where it's going to be worth it to go there and back. But once again, you have to figure the time that you're going to be driving back and not going to be able to accept orders for. So I want to give it to you real and trill, true and straight. So I'll conclude this with saying, because of my area and because of my ability to take longer routes, end up near other hotspots and see tip transparency on those routes, it's ended up being worth it for me to use PAR. I am able to hit $200 a day consistently. I've been able to hit more than that in less time. Using Monday, for example, I was able to earn $240 in less than 8 hours. And so I'm able to earn $200 on a consistent basis and also in less time using PAR. One final factor that allows me to use PAR and earn more money while driving is the fact that I'm able to combine it with Driver's Utility Helper. And Driver's Utility Helper actually has a couple different features that combined with PAR to make driving more profitable and easier for multi-appers and DoorDash drivers everywhere. So when I get an order with PAR, the DoorDash order information pops up on screen, and I personally keep auto decline on. So with PAR, instead of just decisioning the order based off of the information that DoorDash gives you on the offer screen, it also gets that hidden tip information, gets the actual dollars per mile and total amount of the order before using the auto decline. And if it's higher than your normal auto decline amount, for example, if my auto decline is at $1.75 per mile, and the way that DoorDash brings it up, it comes in at $1.50 per mile. But then after PAR as the hidden tip, it takes it to $2.50 a mile. Then I might accept that order. Driver's Utility Helper doesn't decline that order, and I'm able to decision that order manually to either accept it and take it and get that extra money, or decline it because of some other factor. It works the same way on stacked orders, and instead of just getting a hidden tip on both orders, it shows the full amount, both tips on both orders, actual dollars per mile, actual total order amount, etc. That being said, there's a couple other Driver's Utility Helper features that I want to talk about that I haven't seen anybody talking about, but I'm really not sure if anybody else is interested in it like I am, being that I'm an Android person and I know a lot of Dashers have Apple. So get this video to 25 likes if that's a topic you'd like to hear me talk about. Also, if you're interested in seeing my Driver's Utility Helper settings, watch this video here now. Until next time, dash optimally. Peace.